where fighters have been dusting themselves off, ready for another assault on Gaddafi loyalists. We're keeping a close eye on these two towns, Sirte and Bani Walid. They're both remaining strongholds of the deposed leader. Both were scenes of intense battles on Friday, but Gaddafi fighters have been digging in, forcing the troops from the ruling NTC to rethink their game plan. Al Jazeera has reporters on the ground as this story develops. Anita McNaught is on her way to Bani Walid, and Hoda Abdelhamid is in Ras Al Nouf. She's just back from covering the fighting in Sirte. We'll go live to her in a moment, but let's go over to Anita McNaught first. Anita, the fighters heading their way to Bani Walid found it almost impenetrable. What went wrong?
It was almost impenetrable, Jane. I am at base camp and we've stopped here. This is where most of the fighters retreated to spend the night last night, and the senior commanders who I wish to talk to are still sleeping the horrors of the night. They took heavy casualties, I'm told more than 50 injured, at least 6 killed, but those numbers subject to confirmation when I get to speak to the senior guys who are still resting up or asleep at the moment. They retreated in disarray. What they're finding in Bani Walid is that the Gaddafi forces there are very, very well dug in, much more heavily armed than they expected and not dislodgeable. They've also described to me a city where, while some of the citizens are undoubtedly held hostage by circumstance, many of the homes are heavily armed, shooting coming from private homes, shooting coming, in fact, from all directions. There is no such thing as a safe house or a place they can trust when they move in from the outskirts of the city in further, as they do in these probing missions where they advance and then retreat. Even elderly men are sitting in houses, we were told, with 6 or 7 rifles in, loaded up with ammunition, and they're telling us that they have everything in Bani Walid, all kinds of artillery, and they have very, very skilled marksmen on the roofs there shooting at them. So they're facing something that at the moment they can't overwhelm. They could, of course, overwhelm it if they came back with heavy artillery themselves, but then, of course, there is this factor of the innocent civilians of Bani Walid caught in the middle of it. It's a very difficult decision to take, and that's why they're taking it so slowly.
So this could be one of the hardest battles at the moment, Anita. A lot of the fighters were injured. I mean, how they're being treated? Are the facilities there to look after them?
There's various stages. There's an emergency medical treatment centre where we are. It's just over there. And the ones who, once they've been stabilised there, they're taken back further up the road. I should explain to you, I'm on the northern side of Bani Walid. You're used to me talking to you from the southern front. Well, we've come round the other side to have a look at things here. So this road runs behind me here, straight up, really, effectively to Tripoli. And there are better hospitals along the way that, of course, are now solidly behind the NTC forces. And that's where they're taking the more seriously injured for treatment.
Okay, Anita, thanks for that. Let's go to Hoda now. Hoda, I know you've been trying to get close to Sirte. It's not as easy as you expected. It's not as easy as the fighters expected to get there. But what are you hearing about what's going on inside the town?
Well, as you said, it's very difficult for the fighters to get inside the town. Specifically here in the east, they're not even able to get close to Sirte. At the moment, each time they try to advance, well, they're met by fierce retaliation by the Gaddafi forces, who seem to be, according to the fighters, very well organized. And I have to tell you that the fighters here in the east do have some heavy weaponry. They have tanks, they have artillery pieces, so they do have the means to inflict some damage on the Gaddafi forces, and they're not able to. Now, we are hearing that from the west, they did manage to go in to a certain point on Friday, but then they came under heavy shelling, exactly the same as what happened in Bani Walid, and had to pull back all the way to Wadi Jarif, which is about 30 kilometers from the city center of Sirte, but still in the Sirte district. Now, we're also hearing reports that there were some street fighting in some of the areas inside Sirte, and those are reports that we cannot confirm because we're not in there, but the reports we're getting is that that fighting happened in areas areas referred as number 1, 2, and 3, and mainly those are the north coast on the Mediterranean coast, I would say, the western area and the southern area of Sirte. Then also one report about the fighters reaching once again and retaking once again the airport south of Sirte. We still don't have any information, however, whether they kept control of that airport or not.
And Hoda, I've been hearing that there's a real